Exploratory online seminar number 37. Today, I'd like to present why Excel users love Exploratory. So we have, many users, as you expect, used to be using Excel or still using Excel, and they came over to the Exploratory or started using Exploratory. And so we asked them, like, why you use Exploratory more over Excel, and we find some patterns. These are the things. These are the reasons that why they chose Exploratory. So this seminar is sounds like it's kind of like a promoting the Exploratory to the Excel users. Yes, for sure. but but I don't want you to get misunderstand what I'm saying. Is that this one, sort of like, these are the things, for example, something like data reproducibility, we always talk a lot. But I think it makes it more sense when you compare to, what Excel users are going through. And then also, there are many values that Exploratory actually can provide. But if you just happen to start using Exploratory without really knowing those, and then you might be limited the way you use the Exploratory. So I like to introduce those values so that you can kind of sort of fully take advantage of those. And then eventually, the most important thing is you can actually improve your productivity by taking advantage of various things that Exploratory provides. Um, and okay, so that's the purpose of this seminar. Anyway, so last year and still, the world went upside down because of this COVID, right? And it's global phenomenon. It's not just one country or one area. It's all pretty much everybody experienced this disaster, especially in the developed world like West Europe and then North America, and then of course like many other regions, including Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and all that. But it was an interesting experience because there are tons of data. So number of the cases, number of the deaths, number of the vaccine, number of the hospitalization. There's just tons of data everywhere, and then it's this data, age of the open data. Anybody can access those data, so data becomes the hot topic over the last year. And then like I found this article, and I live in the United States, so like I'm not like familiar with what's going on in the United Kingdom. But looks like that England has some problems collecting the data or reporting that data. So according to this article, they reported about like like 16,000 cases of the COVID, and then somehow like they missed that, and because of that, like somehow like they couldn't tell those who were infected could have been infected to be isolated because they didn't have those lists. Somehow they missed those lists, and I was going through this, and then like I just found um, somehow, like 50,000, more than 50,000 potentially infectious people may have been missed by contact tracers and not told to self-isolate because of the data blunder, and so on. And these are stuff like maybe like try to make you scared or whatever. But the important thing is they missed this like 16,000 coronavirus cases went unreported in England. And here's a prime minister of the United Kingdom says, what happened here was that some of the data got truncated and it was lost. When I see this truncated, I start seeing like, whoa, that sounds kind of familiar, starts ringing some bell, right? And it was down to a combination of human error and IT, that is a human using IT. And I just love the way that people in England talks. But anyway, it's fundamentally an IT error, but there is a bit of human error involved in this too. So it's kind of confusing to me. So what is going on here? Like IT error, human error. What's the problem here? I digged a little bit further and then found this article talked about the same incident from the different perspective. And I found this letter, the word said Excel. Whoa. And I actually knew it. The moment I heard like some kind of data was truncated, sounded like, smells like Excel. And it turned out it was Excel. So Excel was the center of this whole problem. And it turned out Public Health England, PHE, was responsible for collecting the data from the labs which were testing. And then the way they do is interesting. It's very like manual. Like we expect like them to have like all computerized and then like sending data digitally in this big data age. No, they actually collect the data manually. I mean, manually, not like pen and pencil. I mean, I heard some offices are actually doing that, but at least they use Excel or spreadsheet or something like that, and then you send that by email or whatever the mechanism they use. And then the last point, one lab had sent its daily test report to PHE, Public Health England, in the form of a CSV file, comma separated value file, and then that file was loaded to the Excel at probably like PHE office or something. And then the way it's added is usually like added at the very bottom, right? So like the data gets accumulated as the days go on, the days go by. And here's the problem. Well, it turned out Microsoft Excel depends on the versions. The recent ones can handle only 1 million rows. And if you had a bad luck, and you believe or not, there are tons of people on the planet still using the older version of Excel, like Excel 2003 or 2008 or something like that. If that's the case, it can handle only 65,000 rows or so. So that means when you open, let's say like you had a 2 million rows in your CSV file, you try to open with Excel, then the more than 1 million rows get truncated. That's what the Excel does. And if you didn't pay attention to it, and you might miss it, like what's wrong, what's going on, and you keep doing the operation every day until someone questions, hey, how come like your office still having the exact same number every day? And that's exactly happened. And then some mayor in the country said the error was the latest in a pandemic of incompetence from the government. There are mistakes, and they are really serious mistakes. This is a highly significant mistake that tells me the system is not fit for purpose. So I don't know what system means, including the people and then like computer and all that. But to me, it sounds like what they're trying to do is basically like, hey, using Excel and transferring the data is really not working. And I'm sure that's a known thing if you happen to be in data science or data analysis or anything data world, and like Excel has a problem. For example, 2013, the JP Morgan lost almost like $6 billion just because somebody made some mistake of some calculation, and they didn't even realize the calculation was wrong, and then where the problem was coming from for a while, and they kept going, and then they lost this much money. And then the biggest problem here is that Excel is easy to start, right? Like you can enter the data and everybody has Excel. Like nobody actually really have to go to training to use Excel. But the problem is that, oops, that there is no, this is the second point in this slide, there's no audit trail. Like you have no idea like what has been done in Excel. You spend 3 hours, maybe 3 days, but you can't really trace like what exactly happened. There is such capability, but nobody actually turned it on. So you have no idea like what was going on. And when there was a problem, it's hard to find where the problem is. So those are known things and nothing new. But it turned out this kind of COVID 19, and this became the real problem, more like problem that to be known by many people. Okay, so the data size limitation. So that if you happen to be using Excel 2003 or older, then it can handle 65,000 rows, but otherwise 1 million rows. But even still, then 1 million rows, and somehow like secretly it cut off like anything more than 1 million rows. So that's the problem. Anyway, so that's the Excel. But so these are the 8 reasons why Excel users love Exploratory. So having said that, I like to go one by one. What are the problems with Excel and how those problems can be solved or can be much better experienced in Exploratory. And then these are the 8, and then I like to cover from 1 to 5 today, as long as we have time. And then the rest, I'm going to do that in the next week. Okay, so let's get started. The better performance and the bigger data size. And this one, we already talked about that. So Excel has a data size limitation. But when we say data size limitation, not just like a size, even that, let's say 1 million rows or maybe like even 500,000 rows you can handle in Excel. The problem is it becomes slower. And then if we cross to, like 1 million rows, and then Excel might freeze. And if you try to do some calculation inside that Excel, and again, it might freeze or it might even shut down. So we tested it, let's say like 500,000 rows of the data. And in order to import, open the Excel or maybe loading the data into the application, like Excel case, it takes about like 26 seconds. This depends on the machine spec, of course. So this is based on like my Mac computer. This was probably a few years ago. So I mean, it's not it's not like an old computer, and also it's not like the latest with the Mac. But anyway, so 26 seconds. And if you try to import into the Exploratory, it's about like 5 seconds. So it's much, much faster. Then here's another thing. So the next day, you shut down the computer and then open the computer, and then you try to open the same file again. Then Excel case, it's gonna take 20 seconds again. I mean, there's nothing different about that the first time, the second time, the third time. But in the Exploratory case, the next time you open, from the second time you open, it's gonna take about like 0.5 seconds or even less than that. The reason it's much faster, like 10 times faster from the second time, is because we store those data in a special format. It's called Parquet file format. And that basically compress the data, but also in a very optimized, memory efficient, optimized format in a way. So binary format. So that helps to load that data instead of like loading the data as Excel. So that's why like it's much faster. And we tested with 1 million rows. And Excel case, it's about like a double, so like 57 seconds. Exploratory, it's not becoming a double. It's just like a little, maybe like about like 20% up or something, like so 7 seconds. So compared to Excel, it's much, much faster. And again, from the second time, because Exploratory optimized, I mean, utilize the Parquet file. So therefore, it's going to take about like 0.6 seconds compared to 57 seconds. So it's much faster. And so, like if you are dealing with like importing or dealing with a bunch of like CSV or Excel files and so on, and then, your productivity is going to get much, much better. Okay. So these are just a comparison. I'm gonna skip this, and then from the second time, left-hand side Excel, 26 seconds, 57 seconds compared to 0.1 half million records and 1 million records. Exploratory, it's almost like not much change, 0.5 or 0.6 seconds. So as the data grows, and then working in Exploratory is much better experience. Okay. So that's better performance with a bigger data size. And the second point is a lower learning cost. This is kind of interesting because people tend to think that Excel is easy to use and anybody can use. And it is true in terms of like entering the data and do some like a very, very simple calculation, like a sum or average or something like that. The problem is though, like when you start doing something, more calculations, more transforming, or more cleaning the data, the things becomes kind of like super complicated. So, for example, let's take a look at these 4 things. Number 1 is a conditional calculation with if function. So this, many people use if you're Excel users. So for example, based on the sales value, this is like a sales data, and based on the value, and then like you might want to label low sales or high sales, or low amount or high amount or something like that, right? And then you use if function, and then create a condition greater than, let's say, 500, and then give high or low as a label name. And then something like this is probably like you've seen it, you have done it, and then that's not that big of a problem. Then you want to do something a little more things. So let's say like let's create 3 groups, right? And then let's say like a greater than 500, then it's high. Then greater than 100 is medium. Then otherwise, meaning less than 100 is low or something like that. Then you start seeing this like a nested, nasty if conditions, if function. So there's an if function inside if. And I've seen, believe it or not, I'm sure like you have, but just crazy amount of the nested if functions. Like I saw like 100 like nested level that I have no idea. The person I was talking to was almost like a crying because it was going too crazy. But this can happen, right? So now with exploratory, it depends what kind of conditional thing you want to do. But something like this, for example, like, hey, I just want to create like 3 groups based on the number of values. Then you use create bins or create categories UI. And all you need to do is just say like, hey, 100, 500, this is the cut point. And then create 3 groups. And you can just use the UI. And you can access to it from the column header menu and create bin. And then type 100, 500. You can even give the label text, and then you have the new columns and they're being created. And then so that's much probably easier and also easier to maintain. If there was a problem, all you need to do is just go back to that UI and see what's going on. But how about more complicated conditions? That was like, you have the numerical values and it create the cut points, and then that's kind of a simple case. But for example, you have 2 columns. Sorry for like Japanese column header for this slide, but let's say like there's a sales column from the second from the right side, and if you find the NA or missing value, or if you or the return column, this is like true or false, the most right hand side, and that's a return column. So if that says true, so either way, I don't want to calculate return sales because those are actually not the sales. So I want to make it as a 0 or something like that. And how you do it? Like if you're in Excel, you could use a if function, and it becomes nested. But you can still do it, but it's just things started getting a little more complicated, less intuitive. And then with exploratory, you have that UI. So I'm going to just quickly do the demo for this one. Where should I go? I thought I had, for example, yeah. Okay, so here is the sales, and also I have this return column. So I'm going to use this sales and the return column to create those 2 conditions, and then return 0 for matching cases. So from the column header menu, and then the previous one like I did was like this create bins, but this time I want to do replace values by setting conditions. When I click on this, and then I can create multiple conditions. So for example, this is like, for example, sales adjusted or something. And then the first condition, this is very similar, basically the same UI as the filter UI. And if sales is, let's say like is NA, it's missing value. And then what I want to do is I want to return 0. And I can create more conditions by clicking this plus button. And then like another one, well, that was a returned column. So like return is true. And then what I want to do is, in this case, again, is a 0. And otherwise, I want to keep it as a sales column values, the original value. And then like, if I click on run button, then I get a new column. And then basically, unless, for example, I'm not sure here, let's say like I see true. So this column matching, the one with the condition is matching. So therefore, the given value is 0. So, and that's all it takes. And then like you can click on this token in this step, and you can see what kind of condition is being created. So it's pretty simple. And then, and then behind the scene in R, we use R as a backend. So there is a case when function is being used, but like it's much easier to operate something like this in UI. So this is another example of that. Speaking of learning costs, Exploratory is probably easier to start actually. And another example is Vlookup. So Vlookup is basically you want to join multiple data sets, or you want to bring the columns from another data set based on the key column values. So for example, left-hand side, we have this sales data or order data. And then there's a product column, has a product ID column. And I like to know the price for each product. And it turned out there's a price data. So I want to bring this price column information and matching the product ID. Right. So you can do in Excel by using this Vlookup function. I'm not the expert on Excel, so like this already kind of scares me, but you can do it. Then like you can, but what if you want to use two columns as a matching sort of like a keys? So that if the segment is consumer, and then the price data, it finds the consumer segment, and then the product ID, try to match the product ID in the corporate or in the consumer segment. So how you do that, like I actually couldn't find how to do it. So some people might know it. There might be a way to do it. Maybe like combining those two columns together or something like that. But I couldn't find like some kind of straightforward way. So, with Exploratory, you can use a join UI, so you don't have to worry about like syntax and all that kind of stuff. So let's try. Let's do it here as well. So like I'm gonna go to this this without price data. For example, this one, like I kind just sample it only for 20 rows. But here's the product ID, and I like to get the price data from the sales price data frame. Right, and there's a product ID, but also there's a segment columns as well. So I want to use those two columns and make them match, and then get the appropriate price information. So how I'm going to do that? I'm going to just click one of the columns and then select the join. And then what I need to do is select the target data frame. In this case, the price 2. I think this data frame name, and then the key column is a segment. And then not just like matching the segment, but also product ID. So I'm going to click on plus button and the product ID looks okay. And then I can click on run button. There are other join options as well. Those are like I have done, we have video. So please take a look at our website and go to the how-to section. But in this case, I'm going to just do the run. And then like I get the price columns, and whatever the columns coming from the target data frame get highlighted with this orange color, so like which columns are coming from the other data frame. Okay, so that's the join, and then the two others. The next one, the clean and manipulate text data. This one, I've seen like a lot of people actually do use Excel to do this. So, like for example, in this case, this is like a unicorn data set. Unicorn is a private company whose values are greater than $1 billion, and then there's such data. So this column has investor names, or basically the venture capital names. And as you expect, and it seems like a same company or the same investor, but I happen to have a different way of presenting that name. So these are the things that takes a lot of time to kind of get them cleaned up and make kind of consistent. So typical case is like uppercase, lowercase, and in Japanese cases, there's this half width, full width. That's a notorious another problem. Or maybe spaces or extra space or sometimes tab or some kind of random characters between the words. And in this case, for example, SoftBank Capital, SoftBank Corp, SoftBank Group. Come on, those are supposed to be same. So we want to just make it as a SoftBank or something like that. So how you do it? Well, in Exploratory, there is a UI. So you can use a UI to clean something like up quickly. Let's actually do it in this demo as well. So here is a unicorn data, and this is a select investors information. And it seems like I'm going to just use a table filter and then find a SoftBank, and I'm going to select the contains and soft bank. Then make sure like this check the ignore cases so like I can find all the SoftBank related one. So it looks like there are a bunch of different type of SoftBank information here. So what I can do is I'm gonna go ahead. That's here. So work with text data. So underneath there is a main one with a remove, replace, extract, convert, and there are others as well. But most of the time, like you're gonna use 4 of them. And then first, I like to get those cases together. So like everything to be title case. Then convert and the title case. This will bring this convert text UI. And I can just preview it. And then I can also search. So like SoftBank looks like it's all title case. And I click run button and I clean that up. And then like I like to do, I want to remove this group or corp or capital and make all of them as just SoftBank. And then same thing from the column header menu, work with text data. And then this time let's remove, select the remove and then text. And then like what I can do is like group. I want to remove this group thing. And I click on preview and let's just show only the SoftBank. Here we go. And then I realized that there's a capital and a corp dot as well. So let's remove these things too. In the case here, instead of just one single letters, I can use this text bracket multiple candidates. Then I can use comma to give a few options. So for example, group and corp and capital. So yeah, these highlighted in bold, these are the letters I want to get rid of. So click on the preview button and it looks okay. And I can just click on run button and then now it's all SoftBank. So it looks okay. And then, from here, you might want to remove the space if just in case, that's typically like that happens. But if I go to the summary view and I can see, okay, like now like we have a SoftBank 27, that's the number one sort of in terms of unicorn companies. So you can visually check what's going on, what happened before do this kind of text data wrangling and after doing the text wrangling and how that changed and is that you expect or not. And you can kind of constantly intuitively check what you are doing. Okay, so that's a clean and manipulated text data. If you like to know more detail, I have done that other seminars in last week. So you might want to go to like our online seminar page and then like find more detail there as well. Okay, so next one, visualizing data with charts. Of course, you use charts to visualize the data in the Excel, but it's actually kind of annoying to do that in Excel because you need to summarize the data first. And then you gotta figure out how to assign the columns. And then different chart ask you different ways to configure. So what I mean. Well, so if you have, let's say like order data or sales data, it's your responsibility to summarize that data first. And then with that summarized data, now you can create a chart. So that's kind of cumbersome. And then now, like if you create one chart and then like, okay, like now like you want to switch to a different chart or something like that, then, you need to make sure the columns are selected in the same way. The column selection, the first chart is okay, but if you start trying to do some adjustments, like you need to understand this Excel language of like dollar sign and exclamation mark and all that stuff. So it's kind of scary. And bar chart has its own way, and a scatter chart has its own way of column assignment. So if, for example, in the scatter chart, it is X values, but bar chart, that is a horizontal category axis label. So it seems like you need to sort of learn by for each chart how to configure like what that terminology is in a way. With Exploratory, we design this chart creation experience or chart experience to be more like based on the a grammar of data visualization. So there's such thing, there's a grammar. And it's basically what that means is regardless of which chart you use, we should use the same keyword or key phrase or terminology. So for example, x-axis for bar chart should be same as x-axis for the scatter chart. Color for the bar chart, it should be same as color for the scatter chart. The color is color. So, and then you can switch between the chart, and then you can just see the data in a different way without reassigning data from one to there to the other kind of stuff. Okay, and then you can create a chart directly from the raw data to the chart, and then let chart takes care of summarization or aggregation. So you don't have to like create like extra step or anything like that. Then from there, you can actually quickly manipulate how you want to aggregate that data. This is probably like it's easier to show how what I mean. So here is the data, like 50,000 rows or so, and then you directly go to the chart, and then you start creating the chart. Whatever the chart is fine. So let's say like the bar chart, and then order date. Then you can select how you want to aggregate inside the chart. So let's say like I want to see by the months, and I can do that. And or this one is like basically months, but still the year information is there. So 2012 January is different from 2013 January to 2014 January. But if you care only about just the months, you don't care about the year, then there is an option of extract. So underneath the extract, then I can select, for example, where is the month name here? Like a month short name, January, December, or something like that. If I select this, it strips out the year information or any other day information. And it purely like I'm just comparing by the months. And then I can switch the chart type between bar or line or whatever the charts, and then it keeps the same configuration. So the x-axis, the x-axis, y-axis, y-axis. And the y-axis, I'm going to just change that to sales, and then I have the option of like what aggregation function I can use. I'm going to keep it as total. And then you can use a color. Color is always grouping that data. So here, let's say like I like to maybe market or something like that. Then like I can see the sales trend for each market and all them together. And then also I can use, there's a repeat by, and then this is also for all the charts. And then I like to compare the returned sales and then not returned sales. Those are the two groups. I can compare those two. And then obviously the scale is different. So like I can just adjust this like a scale y-axis. If I want to change the layout, I can use number of column section. I'm going to just one chart in each row. And then I can, now like I have this chart. So creating the chart is super simple in Exploratory. And of course, if you're just brand new to the Exploratory, you might get confused because whatever the dialect you might be familiar with other tools. But once you start using it, it's pretty, I think it's intuitive and then simple and more flexible. Okay, so that's the chart. Here, so next one is a better debuggability. And personally, I think this is one of the most important thing. Of course, when people start, using any tool, or you start like a data analysis or visualization, whatever, you don't really care about this part. But once you getting into like more than like 3 days or maybe 3 months or whatever, this becomes the key. Like I said at the beginning, because of some errors in the data or in some configuration, and you end up like getting the wrong result, and then that's pretty common. And then like you might realize by yourself or somebody point you, then guess now it's time for you to start finding where the problem is coming from. And like if you don't have a good tool with a good debugability, then it's going to make your life really horrible. So this part is very important. So let's say, hey, can you create a list for North American customers who are top 100 customers based on the sales, not just sales, but actually sales per day. So it's kind of like average sales. And then you spend a few hours, you come up with this list, and you're like, yes, you're done. And then, but when you look closer, you find something wrong. Sales per day somehow is minus. And what is going on? Where the problem is coming from? And then if you have recorded what you have done exactly, which you probably most people don't in Excel, and there are 10 steps. And so now like you have to find like what are those 10 steps? Where you made those 10 steps? And you got to find it. And then typically you have like multiple Excel sheets within the same workbook, and then do some operation in this sheet or that sheet kind of stuff. So it's gonna take a lot of time to find. And when you try to find it, you have to double click on the cell to see what exactly the operation. For example, in this case, here's a rank functions being used to do particular ranking. So you got to go, click a lot of cells. And then if the data is being filtered, this is also kind of annoying because you thought you're looking at the data, but it turned out you're actually not looking at the data because those are hidden by the filtering capability. So that is also another thing. It's going to take a lot of time. And you have to do this all the sheets. So then it turned out, whoa, so this particular thing, operation, for example, removing the outlier values or something like that, or the problem is coming from here. So you fix this. Then you have to make sure like every single steps afterwards were doing okay by going to double click the cell, and then you might have to replace some references and all the stuff. So I don't have to keep talking about this, but it's going to take a lot of time to find the problem and then fix the problem and then make sure all the problems being resolved up to the final data. With the exploratory case, of course, I'm sure like you're familiar with already, is the right-hand side, it records every single data wrangling things you did as a step, as steps. So you don't have to turn on or turn off the auditing or that type of thing. You don't have to write down like what you do stuff. And then, by the way, if you like to write down something, each step has a comment icon, so you can click on it and you can put like your comments or annotation. You can even change the title. The title is coming as a default for each operation, but you can actually change that as well. And then this data wrangling step is always from the top to the bottom. And sometimes you create a branch, sometimes you join with other data frames. But even then, it's always from the top to the bottom. So you know like how the data is being created. You don't have to guess like which data is difference in which way or that kind of stuff. Okay. And then of course you can click on this token in each step and see what's going on, right? So and then each step has its own UI. If it's a filter, if it's a summarize, if it's join, and then it's because of UI, it's more intuitive to understand what is going on, and you don't even have to be you. Like you can actually even ask other people to check this one. That part I'm going to talk about more later. Okay, and then each step has its own summary view, right? So like whenever like you go to summary view, it generates this summary information with the chart and statistic information. So therefore, you can sort of intuitively you can understand what this step actually done compared to the step before. So like before and after. So therefore, like especially when you're debugging, like hey, what's going on, like why this data is not matching. This view will help you in a very intuitive way. And also, when you click on that particular column, this happens with summary view or table view, but it highlights all the related steps at the right-hand side. So you know where to look at. For example, the sales value is something wrong. Okay, so where the sales was created, where the sales was manipulated or updated. And then you go to that particular step and click on the bottom, and then you open the UI and make sure things are done the way it's expected. And then, for example, if you find something wrong and then you fix it, for example, this case, like, like subtraction, like the order of the subtraction is wrong, so you fix it. And once you fix it, then you, on the right-hand side, you don't really have to do anything. Like you just go to the very last step and click on it. And if you don't see the error and you get the expected value, that's it. Like all the steps on the right-hand side is more reproducible. So you don't have to fix like one by one. Of course, like although like if you change the column name, you might have to change the related steps that is referencing that old column name. But other than that, like it's automatically right-hand side takes care of whatever the fix you made subsequently. Okay, so the next one, the data reproducibility. I start talking about data reproducibility. So this, and also automation. So let's talk about that. And this reproducibility, I'm going to come back to this reproducibility at the very end next week for the reporting. But the data reproducibility is another sort of like under estimated thing, but it's really important. Sometimes or often happen is, hey, somebody asks you and then, hey, do this, let's say create a top 100 sales list or customer list or something like that. And then the 5 minutes later, if you're lucky, or 5 hours later, and if you're less lucky, or a few days later, if you're really not lucky, after you spending all time, and then somebody comes, hey, sorry, the data I gave you was wrong. So here's a new data. Can you do it with this data? And then with Excel, you're going to be very disappointed because you have to basically just do the same work with just because the original data is wrong. So if it's exploratory, all you need to do is just click on, if it's the same name files, same file name, then you just override on your PC and then just replace the file. And then once you replace that with a new file, then click on this like re-import button. And that will re-import whatever the latest data. And then all the steps on the right-hand side automatically gets applied. So you don't have to do anything other than clicking on this button. But what if sometimes, somebody give you a different data, or I mean, like in this case, this month's data. Hey, so you did great stuff like last month, and I got a new data. And can you create the same thing, but except with this new data? And in that case, and the people expect you to do it quickly because, hey, you have done that before. I'm expecting exact the same. So probably you can give me back in 5 minutes, right? And then, Excel, well, good luck. But so, for example, data for the last month and then data for this month. And other than that, it's pretty much the same, the column structure-wise. And then you have to remember, like, what did you do? How did I do that? And then basically you want to replicate. And same thing as a debuggability. It's going to be super tough. And then you can, in Excel, you can do like what do you call it? Like VBA, some like a script. then you can do that. But hey, if you want to learn how to program, then I recommend you R or Python rather than Excel programming. That's a different story. But anyway, so with Exploratory, again, the data wrangling steps are recorded at the right-hand side automatically. So therefore, all the stuff is reproducible. So all you need to do is you can copy this whole entire data frame and then sort of duplicate, and then go to this source step and click on this file token, and then change the reference to that file. So like let's say like this is like the same new data for like March, then you just point to the March sales data and click update button, selecting the file and click update button, and then click that last step or whatever the step like you like to see the data being transformed to, and then all the data wrangling step being applied automatically. So you don't have to worry about like what you did, that kind of stuff. Like it's more like kind of like automation, and I think this is pretty important, so that you don't have to do like manual jobs. Therefore, it will be less error prone. But although, if somebody gave you the data that, hey, this month's data, but then the column name is different, then you might get error. So you have to work on it. But that's, going back to debuggability, like which step has a red color. And if you see the red color, that means an error. So like you want to fix it. And it's easier to debug as well. But how about you import it as a different data frame? For example, something like this. You already instead of like copying the original one, like instead like you have a different data frame or you have variations to it, and then like you want to apply the same thing you did to this new data frame or a different data frame. So you just want to copy these steps, and you can actually do it. Go to the original data frame and then using the shift key and select all these steps together. And then in any step is fine, as long as those steps that you're interested in are selected. Then click on this copy step icon. And this will copy all the steps. And then paste it. So let me just show you what that means. So I have here top 100 customers. And this one has like up to 11 steps. And then like, let's say like I like to apply this same thing to this 2020 data. And this one I just imported and I want to just copy it. Then go to the original data frame and select from step 2. Then I'm going to up to like step 10. I don't care about the last step. So I selected this multiple step by using a shift key. And then click on this copy step. And it says steps are copy. And looks good. Then I go to this the new data frame, and then from this menu, the action menu for the step, and there's a paste step. I'm going to select on this, and this just pasted all the steps, and then that data, the new data, went through the exact same steps from the other data frame, and then I get the final result. So this is, I'm sure this is like a sort of like a top 100 customer, basically the same thing just happened. Okay, so that's the there are variations, a few variations how you can actually reproduce the data depends on your needs. One is you just click on the import button, this one. If the file pointer is basically just pointing the same file name but except a different content, then in that case you can click on this import. Or you can actually copy this data frame and duplicate, and then go click on the first step and then change that file reference to the new new file. Or if you already have another data frame, then you copy these multiple steps and paste it there. So a couple ways to do it. Okay, So now time is kind of coming. So let's see. I think I can do it. Just for a few more minutes. So no dependency on Excel guard, or of course, like if you use Exploratory, there's no Excel guard. But surprisingly, there is a such thing called Excel guard. I'm not sure, like in English or America or Europe or Africa or Asia. In Japan, that's where it originally came from. There is a word called Excel God. We call it kami for God. But the person who actually has to take care of, like, ended up being, taking care of all the Excel or data related works, and everybody know this person, and everybody come to this person, and this person like has a special skill and somehow like manipulate, clean, or do number work, and then give the result back to them. So the more you ask, and then the more this person does, and then more this person does, and then more people depend on this particular person or God in Excel God. And and then so now, like, let's say you remember this top 100 customers data wrangling stuff, and then this person has been doing it for like, I don't know, like last few years or whatever, and people just expect you ask this person and this person can take care of it, right? And one day your boss comes in and hey, that guy's left, so can you take care of it from tomorrow, from today? And you're like, whoa, like I have no idea. That's a black box, right? It's like a God. I mean, like, you're not supposed to know. And and also, even if that person hasn't left the company, that person becomes the bottleneck for your organization, for your team, because everybody goes to this God, and then she or he can take care of only so much. So everything just kind of stops there. And then people talk about, hey, you know what? Like, we got to do the skill transfer, and then you do the study group and then the seminar and all that stuff. But soon things go back to normal, which is everybody go to the Excel guard. So with Exploratory, we have something called EDF, which is exploratory data format. Which what that is it's a reproducible data format that you can use to export your data as. So then you, instead of like exporting the data as a CSV, you can export as an EDF. Then you can import. Once you export as an EDF, you or another person or the other person people can import that EDF into their Exploratory, and this will reproduce exact the same way the data was created or transformed. And this happened to be, like, I'm showing the data, but it can be for chart, it can be for dashboard, it can be for report. Whatever you like to reproduce, you can export it as EDF. So therefore, then if there's somebody like who's been working on with the Exploratory, but if this person export EDF, you get it, import it in your Exploratory environment, you know exactly what steps it takes to get that data. So you can learn from it, and you can click on each step to see like what is going on, because it's UI, it's easier to understand. And if it's necessary, like you can even customize it and see like how that works and stuff. So it's much easier to work with this type of reproducible format as a way you can communicate, you can collaborate with others. Okay, so that's it for today. Having said that, like next week, the part 2 for why Excel users love Exploratory. And so I like to cover the 6, 7, 8, the remaining reasons in the next week. So please stay tuned at the same time. That's next Wednesday next week at the same time. Okay, and to find the past recording or future plan, you go to our website, exploratory.io, and then under the Learn, there is an online seminar menu, and from there, you can find more detailed information. Okay, that's it. Having said that, I like to open up for Q&A session. If you guys have questions, please let me know.